Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing In the Hall of the Mountain King by Burnt Island Games. Now, the timing of the review is not a coincidence. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, then, well, first of all, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and if you haven't already been watching all my videos, and second of all, make sure you're watching all my videos. But my point is that I have already been talking about the fact that they have just announced, Burnt Island Games has announced a prequel, so to speak, of Fall of the Mountain King, a precursor to whatever's going on in the Hall of the Mountain King. Different game, similar art, or maybe same art. It could be the same art, I don't actually know, but it sure looks like the same art. Different mechanics, different designer, but basically it reminded me that this is a game that I really enjoy that I have not yet pulled out to actually review. And so I pulled it out, got it to the table again. It's been a few months since I played it last, and, well, this is the review part of the story. So, In the Hall of the Mountain King is a bit of a mess of a game to review. It has a bunch of different things working together in cohesion to bring you an interesting and very different experience. Now, this is going to be something that's not new to those of you who know Burnt Island Games. This is a company that manages to produce, first of all, the production quality is, in general, off the charts. I just covered this when I did a video on deluxification of games, and I specifically brought out a few games, including In the Hall of the Mountain King, as good examples of just everything deluxified. We have metal coins that are incredibly premium in the feel. We have components that are every single one custom made. We have game trays. We have everything. This is, by the way, in case you're wondering or disappointed later, this is going to be the Kickstarter exclusive version of the game, which means if you're buying this in retail, you are going to get a dialed back version of what I have over here. Still an amazing degree of production value attached, don't get me wrong, but make sure to check out pictures of those so you don't buy this game expecting these miniatures or those metal coins and, well, being just a drop disappointed in that. But going back to this mess of a game aspect of the game, I don't even know how to really teach this game, so I'm going to just cover different sub-aspects of what makes this game different, special, interesting, or all of that. And we'll go into what I liked, didn't like, see others not liking, the whole review and everything else as well. But before we get to that, let's just talk about the general aspect of the game. And so that general aspect, like many games, is going to be scoring points. You're going to want to score points that you're going to go all the way around this little board scoring a whole bunch of points. You're going to get points throughout the game. I would say a majority of points are going to come throughout the game itself, but as well as the fact that at the end of the game, you're going to score for the location of your statues in the game. And that can be a decent chunk of points at the same time. You see, every single time you build a tunnel in this game, you're going to score points. You will score more points the better the material you built the tunnel with. There's going to be 3 different levels of material, the iron or stone or whatever. I don't actually know all the names of the materials, but there's going to be what I otherwise refer to as gray, dark gray, and red. That's what I refer to these materials as. And you're going to use that to build tunnels starting from your home point. So perhaps I take this tile over here, and I build it like so over there, starting my network. Now, these networks are never going to touch other people's networks. This is not a polyomino game where I'm trying to mesh my polyomino tunnel into your polyomino tunnel. We're going to be separate, competing to get slowly but surely into the center of the mountain, into the hall of the Mountain King, as it were. And so I build that tunnel, and I spend a bunch of resources from my board. We'll come back to the resource section over here, but I go ahead and pay 4 gray resources, stone, whatever they are, and then I'm going to go ahead and take 4 points. This is all handily printed on your sheet over here, and I advance my little token. Well, it's kind of just over here. Let's just reset these over here. 1, 2, 3, 4 over there, and boom, I got 4 points. I built a tunnel. But more importantly, I've started to build out and branch out my network. Perhaps on a future turn, I go ahead and pay 5 red for this one. This is going to be a handy dandy piece over here, and I'm going to put that over here, attaching it to my network. So I'm slowly developing my network out. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put that over here. That's going to give me a few extra resources, because every time you cover up resources, you're going to take those resources and put them on your player board. But additionally, I am actually putting this on top of a rubble space, which means we're going to pretend for a second that I had a hammer that I then go ahead and pay. Every time you cover up a rubble space, for each rubble space you cover up, you have to pay a hammer, which means that edge of the board, not such a big deal. But as you progress towards the center of the board, you are going to encounter more and more rubble spaces, so prepare those hammers, you're going to need them. But you may have noticed, I also locked in a statue. Whenever you build your polyomino tunnel out under these statues, you've now added a statue to your network. A statue that will score you points at the end of the game, almost no matter what. I say almost because two statues on the same exact polyomino piece will not score you extra points there. But let's go back to that statue. That statue over there is going to be on the outer edge of the mountain. This Hall of Mountain King area over here is going to be tiered into different levels of how close you are to the center, from black to gray to red to orange to yellow. And all that's going to be on your player board over here, although the black one is a little hard to see, very poorly printed over there. But that statue over there is going to score me either 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10 points, depending on how progressively closer it is in the mountain, which may seem like a measly amount in terms of I just got 4 points for building a tunnel, and maximum I can get is 10 points for getting it all the way to the center, and you're not wrong. But if you can slowly but surely build out your pedestal, so if I take this pedestal over here, and let's say I build out a pedestal, let's say I have another tile over here that goes all the way up over here, and another tile that goes over here. I'm just making up the fact that I paid for all of these, but then I'm going to go ahead and put that down there. When you put down a pedestal on the board, and you have one opportunity to do so when you build that tunnel for the first time, and you have to earn that pedestal, you're going to have to acquire it, it's not simply available. So I take that pedestal, I put it down over there. Because I built it on yellow, I'm going to go ahead and take these 2 bonus points, because I got that pedestal in that color. Every pedestal can only exist once within each color spectrum, regardless of the player. So for example, no one else can build a white pedestal in yellow anymore. Only orange and blue are available. But more importantly, if I can move my statue all the way to that pedestal and clip it in, that statue pedestal combination is going to be worth 20 points to me. Now 20 points is a lot of points. That's more than all the points I got from building those out, well, unless I paid entirely in red. And so that is going to be the core idea of In the Hall of the Mountain King. Lots more to come, don't get me wrong. But this idea of building out your Polyomino pieces, developing your network, and slowly but surely moving statues towards the center of the board to score more and more points as opposed to having them on the end. It's a balance in this game because you're going to want those resources on the outer edge, and you're also going to want those statues on the outer edge, but then you eventually have to move them towards the middle, well, assuming you want to score chunks of points for them, and there's nothing quite so satisfying as, well, scoring chunks of points for everything. That's one. Now notice along the way, we're going to need tons of resources. We're going to need stone, iron, and the red thingy, which I don't remember its name. We're going to need all those resources in order to slowly but surely move those statues towards the middle, or more specifically, to build those Polyomino tunnels out. Then you're going to need those hammers to develop over those rebel spots. You're also going to need carts. We haven't even talked about carts yet, but carts are going to be a big facet of the game. That's how you're going to move statues. If you have carts, more specifically white carts, which will explain how you get all these resources soon. That's going to be, well, one of the most fun parts of In the Hall of the Mountain King. But every cart is going to allow you to move a statue from one Polyomino piece to an adjacent connected Polyomino piece. So I can take this, and for one white cart or wild cart, I can move it here. For 2 wild carts here and 3 wild carts there, and boom, that cost me 3 carts. I moved my statue. You may notice resources, hammers, and carts. We need all of those to make this engine work. Which brings us to the Trollsmoot. My favorite part of In the Hall of the Mountain King. I absolutely adore the Trollsmoot. We'll cover that. So Trollsmoot. The Trollsmoot over here is going to be this network of trolls you are building out. Now, I specifically have this a little bit built out as if it were mid-game. If it were early game, it wouldn't be like this. But every time you buy a troll from up over here, you're going to add it to your Trollsmoot. This is the part where I tell you the turn structure of the game. The turn structure of the game is going to be the first thing, all handily printed on your player board. There's 4 steps. The first thing you do is you can either cast a spell or use... Let's guess it again. You can cast a spell and use a workshop. You can do both of those. You can cast 1 spell and use 1 workshop. Workshops are going to be these things we add to the board whenever we build next to them. They allow us to convert resources around. They're useful, not nearly as much fun as the spells, but they are useful. But spells, if you have any of these pink gem resources, you can go ahead and put it on one of these spells on the board in order to cast that spell. These are going to give you different ways of breaking the game. Perhaps you build a tunnel that is 1 larger than the one you paid for. Perhaps you can move extra carts around from your trolls to your storage, turning them into wild carts. Different opportunities to mix up the game state. And once there are 3 gems on a spell, well, that spell is going to be used. We're going to get rid of it from the game, and we're going to replace it with another spell. And that's how the spells are going to slowly but surely move in or out of play. So again, step 1, you you cast a spell and use a workshop. Step 2, you take your main action of the game. I would say it's going to be maybe 60-30, 70-30. I got to do work on that math over there. It's going to be roughly 70-30 of building tunnels versus developing your Trollsmoot. Because every time you build a tunnel, you pay resources and you build said tunnel. Alternatively, you develop your Trollsmoot. You're going to take a troll and you're going to add it to your Trollsmoot and cascade the resources down. Now, I'm actually going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to pretend I have an extra coin, and I'm going to say that I want this troll over here. Whenever you take a troll, you have to either take a level 1 troll. They're not as good as level 2 trolls, which are not as good as level 3 trolls. But if I put those resources on said trolls, then you can go ahead and go a tier above it. So a level 2 troll costs you 1 coin for each of the trolls below it. A level 3 troll costs you 5 coins, 1 for each of the trolls below that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this troll. The good news is this troll is previously bribed, which means I'm going to earn that coin. So the trolls below it do become more appealing, more enticing as those bribes develop. I'm going to take that troll, I'm going to add it to my board over here, and then I'm going to cascade it downwards. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this. So I'm going to pretend, for the sake of this example, that I have this here from a previous cascade. And I'm going to go ahead and put 1 over there, 1 over there, and we're going to put a cart over here, and a cart over here. Notice all these deluxified resources, a coin over here, 2 of this iron over here, and then lastly a coin over here. Now there already was a gem left over from a previous cascade, which means I won't be able to fill that. So while this Trollsmoot is so enticing, so appealing as you develop these hordes of resources, and then by the way, put out another card out there, over there. And by the way, that's going to be how you earn those pedestals as well. These level 2 and level 3 trolls are going to give you pedestals, which are essential for chunks of points later in the game. But this Trollsmoot is going to be so enticing as you cascade resources down that train, but you're going to have to ensure you use them before you buy your next troll, or you're playing a very inefficient game, and a very inefficient game will ensure that you lose. And that's kind of in the Hall of the Mountain King. That's mostly, basically everything going on here. We covered spells, we covered the Trollsmoot, which is going to be how you generate resources. We covered the main board, which is both a combination of trying to build out on the edges and also build towards the center. There's one thing we have not covered, so let's go ahead and pretend that we have been incredibly productive and we've built one over here, paying all associated hammers, we know what we're doing, and we built one over here as well, okay? Whenever you build on this board over here, you have the opportunity, let's take one more tile just for the sake of whatever. There's going to be these tiles in the game that you can lay over your area of Polyomino. These are going to be great halls. You can establish a great hall. That's going to be step 3 of your turn. You can dedicate a great hall if you have the room to do so. The room to do so means completely covered part of the board. If there's anything underneath it, there's a statue, if there's a pedestal, all those things will move up. You cannot cover your starting space, you cannot cover workshops, and that great hall, if I can move a statue to a section on it, well, it's either going to score 12 points or 25 points, although the sizing of the hall will vary. So that's going to be step 3, and finally step 4 of your turn is where you cash in those cards to move the statues around the board. Rinse and repeat until game end is triggered. Game end will be triggered when the second player has developed their full Trollsmoot with 10 different trolls. Now you start the game with 4, so effectively you're buying or building or acquiring 6 trolls throughout the course of this game. That's in the Hall of the Mountain King. It's a bit of a mess because there's so many different things interlocking in this game, so many different aspects combining into a cohesive engine of building out your tunnel networks and developing your Trollsmoot and combining all these things and the spells and the great halls and the carts and the workshops and all these things into an engine that is surprisingly fun every single time to get into. Now, lastly, and then I'll get to the review stuff, there is this little champion expansion, which I really want to talk about this one, because this champion expansion gives each character a starting champion. Now, I don't know if this is available in retail. I know it's in the Kickstarter copy. I don't know if you can get this, but if you can track this down, I recommend tracking this down, because we'll come to this in the review. But these champions give you just a little bit more you can do. Every player has a unique advantage, something they can do, but the game doesn't take away anything. It just gives you a drop more you can do, and that really matters for me in this game, because in the Hall of the Mountain King is a game that lets me do so much, but every game I want to do just a bit more. And this brings us into the review section of this, well, review, where I talk about the things I liked about in the Hall of the Mountain King, or because this game is very much staying in my collection. And to begin with, the production values are completely off the charts. The art is gorgeous, the coins are gorgeous, the resources are gorgeous, everything's gorgeous. If you got the retail copy of this game, then your little meeple statues are also gorgeous. They're not, these statues over here, they are nice. Meeple statues are pretty solid as well. The Polyomino pieces, everything in this game, from the art, the production, the thickness of all the punch board and everything, it is a well-produced game. Beautiful. It's a game trays, amazing game trays, very functional. Everything here does its job well. The Cascading Trollsmoot is going to be my favorite part of this game, I have to say. I like Polyomino games. I like a lot of Polyomino games. This is sort of a Polyomino game. We'll touch upon that. But the Trollsmoot is so much fun to build and develop your Trollsmoot. If you can manage to get a level 3 troll into your second level of your Trollsmoot, meaning one of the first trolls you buy, and if you can cascade that troll effectively 4 or 5 times, I think 5 is the maximum, 4 times the maximum, 4 times throughout the game, if you can get that level 3 troll to generate and regenerate resources, imagine this troll over here in the second level of the Trollsmoot. It's going to cascade the first time, it's going to cascade when you build above it, it's going to cascade when you build above that. That's a chunk of resources. That will allow you to build such an engine of a tunnel system, and to get your things on the board in such a satisfying and rewarding way. The Trollsmoot is so much fun, but you have to manage it well. If you cascade too early, then you are wasting resources. If you cascade too late, then you might be primed for the best delivery ever, but the game might end before you're ready to cash in on that. It's a balance. It's a balance of knowing when you have to get more versus when what you have is enough, and it's okay if you don't have the most efficient cascading of your resources down that tree as you possibly can. But that Trollsmoot is an entire section of the game alone that I enjoy. These spells, the workshops, the variability, the trolls that come out, and the way those mix up, those champions, it's going to give you a variable puzzle of a game. One game will be different to the next because of what you have in your Trollsmoot. Perhaps one game you are developing tons of different magical thingies or whatever in your Trollsmoot, and therefore you can keep doing a spell every single round. And another game, you have a troll section that's going to just deliver sheer resources and carts. The different things you build in your Trollsmoot are going to cater towards a different game, and the combination of spells, the combination of workshops, which are variable game to game, all of those things will give you a different puzzle every single time you play this game. And that puzzle is important because ultimately it is an efficiency game. It's a game about how do I get the most points as I head towards the center of that mountain, as I build out those polyomino pieces. What is the most efficient way to score the most points in the Hall of the Mountain King? So the variability I like. The tight options for winning in this game, the triggering endgame, the components, the min-maxing of every single thing you do in this game, that triggering of endgame, because like I said, right, this is going to combine to both the puzzle, to the Trollsmoot. The second player to finish their Trollsmoot is going to trigger endgame, and it's a balance. You constantly want to do more, but if you're willing to push the game just a little bit, perhaps you trigger endgame when it is good for you, but not so good for others. Even when it's bad for you, but it's worse for others. There's so much happening in this game, that combination of balancing the edges of the board versus rushing in towards the end of the mountain. There are different ways to score points. You can score points through the ideal placement and moving of statues. You can score points through just the developing of an underground tunnel network. If you develop those red resources, which I cannot for the life of me remember the name, but if you develop those red resources and constantly build out tunnels that are all built with them, you could be building out 11 points at a shot. You do that on the edge of the board, but you don't have to worry about encounter the rubble quite as much. Imagine a game where you ignore the complete center of the mountain. That is not where you're heading. Let the other players fight over the scraps over there. Instead, you run around the board collecting resources as you build out the edges, constantly building out developed large red tracks or whatever it is, scoring 60, 70, 80 points in this game, in a game that generally runs around 100 points. You can play this game so many different ways with so many different strategies that will be developed by the different things that happen in the board, the trolls that come out, the spells, the workshops, as well as what other players choose to do in this game. As far as what I didn't like in this game, so to begin with, let's start with two things. There's a pet peeve, and then there's an actual complaint. The pet peeve over here is going to be the fact that the player colors and the game colors overlap. Now, this is something I just don't like in games when they do this, where they have these orange, blue, and white statues in the game, and then there's orange, blue, and white as player colors. I think it's orange, blue, and white. I have to double check that. There's orange, blue, I don't think there's white, but there's overlap in those different things, which is always a bit confusing when that happens. You have to explain to players, no, I know you're blue, but these are not your statues, and I know you're orange, but these are not your statues. They're everyone's statues. You have to do that in the game. Small pet peeve. Again, take it with a grain of salt. It is not going to break the game, but it is something I have genuinely had to explain every single time I taught the game. I would say what a bigger thing that I don't like is I do find the statue and pedestal scoring in this game to be fairly unintuitive. In fact, it's one of the reasons I didn't try going heavily into the review, because I covered it, don't get me wrong. But there's going to be so many different things going on. To begin with, you get points when you build a pedestal. Now, that pedestal may or may not be relevant. You don't have to fill a statue on it. You just get points for building it, depending on where you built it. Additionally, you get points if you put a statue on an area of the board. You get points regardless of where the statue is, but not if it's on another tile. But if you can move it to a pedestal, it's going to be more points. If you don't move to a pedestal, it's totally fine. If you have multiple statues on one tile, you don't score points. If you move a statue to a Great Hall, I haven't even talked about this. If you move a statue to a Great Hall, then the statue is going to make the Great Hall be worth more points, but the statue itself is no longer worth points. And in fact, the pedestal no longer matters in the Great Hall. If you're losing track there, it's because there are a lot of different things around that statue and pedestal scoring. Now, it's fine. At the end of the day, the job gets done, the game gets taught, and people walk away understanding how to play. But it certainly is a drop of a mess that I have to give multiple examples of every single time I play. Now, that's the only real thing I don't like, but we'll cover it more in my final thoughts. As far as what I can see others not liking about the game, to begin with, and this is something I did have to get over. If I were doing this review after my first play, I would have mentioned this, but this is a polyomino game-ish that doesn't really feel like a polyomino game. If you walked in the Hall of the Mountain King expecting a real polyomino experience, I don't feel like it's a polyomino game when I play it. It is a game about building out your networks, and more often than not, you are not trying to interlace pieces in a way in which they perfectly fit together in that satisfying aspect of, look how I just filled that slot over there. No, Sometimes you're doing it for your great hauls, sure, but the rest of the time you're more concerned with the spiraling aspect of your network, of how efficiently you can build out other sections of tunnel in a way that really develops what you're trying to do, but has nothing to do with the typical polyomino placements of a board. So if you're expecting a polyomino feel to the game, I don't think that the game really delivers that quite as much as I would like. The game is a drop tighter than I would ideally like. Now, I'm someone who likes to do a lot in games. I'm someone who walks into the game experience wanting to get a ton done, and I don't want to walk at the end and feel like, well, I was really trying to build 3 more tunnels and do 2 more this. Now, a game always has to leave you wanting a little bit. If you get to do everything, there's no reason to come back, so you always need to be wanting just a little bit. But in the Hall of the Mountain King, the base game alone, I generally do feel like I want to do more than the game lets me do. Understanding that I can't do everything, but I still want to do more than the game lets me do. That's where these mini champions come into play, and that's why I do recommend these. I think these really do give you that drop more that you were looking for, that drop more you want to get done. But past that, if you want to get around that, you can probably just give each other a few starting resources in the game begins if you feel you want to do more. Just balance it out or whatnot. But still well done, don't get me wrong, but if you are someone who doesn't like that tight feeling of, I want to do 15 more things, then that's something to be mindful of. And lastly, and this is likely the biggest one in terms of whether In the Hall of the Mountain King is not a game for you, the game very much is AP prone, analysis paralysis, that idea of players intently staring at the board while they try to decide what is the most efficient use of my turn, what can I possibly do, but more than that, before I put down this piece on the board, before I sit down and say that piece is going here and I'm putting it here and I'm taking this, I need to ensure that I have the correct amount of cards because I'm going to want to use my cards. I'm going to want to use those resources. I'm going to want to cash in a few hammers because I'm preparing for a Trollsmoots cascade. And all these things are going on in someone's head as they min-max their way towards the perfect turn. It certainly is a game that can be A-prone. There is a reason I am reviewing this game myself and not playing it on camera with my wife, even though we both enjoy this game. It's because it is fairly AP prone. It is a game where you want to sit and stare and min-max your move. Now, in our group, we find that we do have that AP aspect. What we tend to kind of let it sit for a minute and then just move on with a turn for better or for worse. But if you have AP, analysis paralysis prone players in your group, if you have people who need to min-max their way to the perfect turn, then this may be a game you find just as frustrating as you do find it rewarding. As far as my final thoughts on the Hall of the Mountain King, it may sound like I like this game more than I do, because I do like this game, don't get me wrong. But while I don't have a lot of complaints about the game, I would say the highs of the game also are limited to a degree. I really enjoy my experiences within the Hall of the Mountain King. I would love an expansion for this game that gave me more stuff. I don't really know what would work well and mesh well, but I would love more stuff for this game. I do enjoy it, but at the same time, I will say my favorite part really is the Trollsmoots. The Polyomino game always does have me feeling a little bit like it's not the Polyomino experience I signed up for. Still fun, still immensely enjoyable every single time, but not, I don't know, something about this game does not perfectly mesh in a game that I'm expecting. Now, that is typical for Burnt Island games, I will say. I have enjoyed every single one of their games, primarily because they do feel unique and different, and I can never truly compare them to another game in my collection. I can't say I'd rather play that Polyomino game than this Polyomino game, because this isn't even a Polyomino game. Their games in general have that aspect of managing to feel different yet the same at the same time, and generally they end up being rated somewhat the same in my collection. In fact, I would say, I haven't done reviews for the rest, but I would say in general, including in the Hall of the Mountain King, I'd rate pretty much all of them a 4 out of 5. They are solid, enjoyable experiences. I like them a lot. They are a great game, but something about them holds them back from being that 5 for me. Something about their experiences never mesh in that perfect way that I would ideally be looking for. Now, don't get me wrong, a 4 out of 5 is a pretty decent rating in my collection, and all things considered, In the Hall of the Mountain King is a game that I would absolutely recommend, and I will be paying attention to The Fall of the Mountain King when it launches on Kickstarter some point later this year. It has nothing to do with this game, to the best of my knowledge. It has nothing to do mechanically with this game, so liking this one does not mean you'll like that one, and disliking this one does not mean you'll dislike that one. But that's all neither here nor there. This is the Hall in the Hall of the Mountain King, and I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this review, and until next time, have a good one.